47 of the Walshing Apps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg. I'm excited to be recording this episode live from Ventura, California at Craftcation. We're in a podcasting booth at the conference, and I have a guest here today whom I'm so excited to be meeting for the first time. Her name is Deborah Balmuth. Deborah Balmuth is the publisher at Storey Publishing, where she began as a project editor in 1993. She loves to knit, cook, play with fabric, do origami, read, write, bike, hike, and spend time in nature, all of which she gets to do often in and around her timber-framed home in the woods of western Massachusetts, and even sometimes as part of her work. Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Abby.
How are you?
Great.
Has the conference been going well for you?
Oh, it's been great.
Yeah, it's been pretty awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so let's start by talking a little bit about Storey. So Storey publishes books on a wide variety of topics, from raising animals to crafts to gardening, cooking, beer, building, part-time business, and sort of mind-body things. And I wondered what you see as sort of uniting all of those different kinds of topics. And, like, what is Storey's sort of guiding mission, if you had to describe it?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're actually a little unusual for a publishing company because we actually do have a mission statement. So our formal mission statement is that we publish practical information that promotes personal independence in harmony with the environment. And that's a big umbrella, and from within that, there's a lot of opportunity for interpretation. But I like to say that our books are really springboards for people to engage with hands-on activities that enrich their experience of life. So all kinds of activities apart from the screen, basically, and activities that really that nourish us in so many ways. So we have organic gardening, raising animals, raising your own food in many different ways, preparing your own food, and then nourishing your creativity through crafts, and nourishing your mind and your body through nature observation, and creating your own shelter, building in your own home, all nourishing your own environment too.
Okay, so then a lot of it is really hands-on. Would you say that
that's true? Yeah. We've always really promoted hands-on activity. A lot of our books are what you would call how-to books, that are instruction, teaching people how to do things.
Right. And I pay a lot of attention to the spines of books because I have written books, and I write a lot about publishing in the craft publishing world. And so I'm one of these people who's I know the publisher of all these different people's books, but I think most people, and certainly myself before I got into doing this, I totally didn't pay attention to that and didn't even realize that there were different I don't know what I was thinking, but I just didn't notice. Yeah. And so for the people who are listening who maybe don't notice the spines of books, what are some craft titles? Because I think most people who listen to my podcast are crafters. So what are some craft titles that Storey's published that people might recognize and be like, oh, that's one of their books?
Right. So we've done a lot of knitting books in the last few years, and the One Skein Wonders series was one of the first series that we started, and now we're about to release the 7th book in that series. One Yard Wonders in the sewing area is another series that we've done. Carrie Chapin's Handmade Marketplace and Grow Your Handmade Business are 2 books that have been particularly successful for us. Recently, we've done Spruce, the step-by-step guide to upholstery with Amanda Brown, and other books other craft books. We've done some kids craft books, Sewing School and Sewing School 2.
Which are great books.
Yeah, by Amy Plumley. I know you've spoken with her. We've done a series of our knitting answer book, crochet answer book, a lot of crochet books, the Beyond the Square crochet motifs, Edie Ekman's series, and Around the Square, around the corner crochet borders is another one of hers.
Okay, so that just sort of gives us a feel for, I'm sure listeners have sort of seen at least some, if not all of those books and heard of those authors. And so all of those books are story books.
Right.
So people know, okay, that's story publishing. That's what, then the craft area, that's sort of some of the things, the titles that you might recognize.
Yeah.
So I think that's helpful for people.
Yeah.
So when you're working with an author and kind of developing an idea, what kind of thing makes for a good how-to book? What kind of, how do you make a good how-to book?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think first of all, what I look for is someone who's really passionate about what they do, and passionate in a way of just wanting to know everything about it, having explored a lot of different approaches to the topic that they're writing about. We've always looked for authors that are really engaged in what they're doing first, and then hopefully they have writing skills too, but have really experimented and tried a lot of different approaches, and having taught what they do is often makes for a very good author of a how-to book. Because if you tried to teach what you know to a lot of different people, you realize that everyone has a different learning style or a different approach, and we try to really cover that. I think a good how-to book thinks about all the different kinds of readers that might be using that book and how they might approach it. Some people are really visual and they want to have step-by-step photographs and aren't going to read the text. Other people want it really explained clearly and in depth in step-by-step text. Some people want a lot of background about the techniques or troubleshooting. And I think all of those are aspects of a strong how-to book, and thinking about that. So other people want to look at the pictures and read the captions, and I'm always a big believer that the captions ought to be things that be pieces of text that could be read as individual units and not read them and go, I have no idea what this means. I have to find the reference in the text to understand this caption. So thinking about all the different ways that somebody might use the book is one of the aspects that I think makes for a successful how-to book, is all those different elements of, we have the step-by-step how-to, but somebody might make this mistake, so let's put this in a sidebar. In case this happened to you, that your stitches, you dropped a stitch back the row before, this is what you do now. So that, I think, is part of what makes a really strong how-to book, is thinking about all the different aspects of how somebody would be using the book or approaching the book.
Absolutely, and I think that teaching is such a good way to find that out, because when you're sitting at home and you know very well how to do something, you assume that everybody sort of can understand it exactly the way that you're explaining it. When you go out into the world and you teach the same thing multiple times, inevitably everything can go wrong. So people misinterpret every different aspect of it, and you start to realize, okay, I need to back up and always explain this step in an extra way or whatever. And it really informs your work. And even if you don't write a how-to book, but you're just writing how-to instructions for a blog post or a free tutorial or something like that, if you've taught it to somebody else, that's going to be stronger. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah, and it can be hard sometimes if you know something so well to think about taking it way back to the basics. So that's where an editor can actually be really helpful, because I always say to our editors, well, you're the first avid reader of this book. So as you look at the manuscript, assume you don't know anything, and are you learning enough to get you at every stage? Are you getting all the information you need to be successful with that step? It's hard. I mean, especially with hands-on activities that often when you're teaching, you realize, I just need to demonstrate this with my hands as opposed to telling people. So that's another challenge with a how-to book, is how do you put this into words? And the images are a big part of it. We do a lot of planning and thinking about all the steps that need to be photographed. And I always say to an editor, whenever, or as I'm editing, I'm thinking, wherever I start to think, I need to visualize I'm trying to visualize in my mind what this looks like. Or sometimes you'll see our editors sitting at their desk with their knitting needles or their sewing, and they're like, I just had to try this because I needed to explain how it's this three-dimensional thing. How am I going to explain it in text or even in a photograph?
Right. So a few questions come up for me. One is, are the editors always people who know how to do that particular craft? So I have found that is not necessarily true. At least in one of my two books, my editor was a potter. He was awesome. He was a great editor. This is the editor for Stuffed Animals, and he was a great editor. He did not sew at all. And I just wonder if that's true at Storey or not. Like, are your editors proficient in the book, the topic of the book they're editing?
Not always, and I think that's, of course, part of what makes our job so interesting is that we're always getting to learn. We get a new book. One of the first books when I joined Storey in 1993, the first book I was handed was on beekeeping, and I didn't know anything about beekeeping. And a lot of our books are assuming that you're a beginner, so in that way, the editor is a good test of how clear the book is. But I have found it's hard to have somebody editing a knitting book who doesn't know how to knit because they can introduce more mistakes than actually by thinking that, oh, this isn't clear at all. And it's like, actually, if you have basic knitting skills, you will understand that. So there are, but I think I think being a crafter in general, or having an affinity for crafts, or having done crafts, I guess that's the one thing. If you've done crafts, then I think you're qualified to edit most craft books.
Interesting. Yeah. I would agree with you that knitting would be a hard one.
Yeah.
to jump into without knowing what the lingo was.
Yeah.
And and so the other question the other idea that came up for me was about sort of the step-by-step photo. So when I have done step-by-step photos for my books and for my patterns in the past, that's really been sort of up to me as the author to sort of decide, in one book, the photos, I flew out to Denver and I did all of the photos at Interweave. And in the other book, I did all of the photos on my own and it was completely up to me. Where I was like, I think we need a photo for this step. I don't think we need one for this step, that sort of thing. So so how does it work at Storey? Do your authors take their own photos? Sometimes, always? Do they, have to prepare all the step outs and then come to you and you guys take the photos? And how do you help an author to determine which steps need photos and which steps you probably don't need a photo illustration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And we ask our authors, as they're writing their manuscript, to prepare a preliminary list of suggested photographs and or illustrations, because in some craft books, in some cases, illustration may be clearer than photography. Knitting is one of those cases where and crochet too, in many cases, it can actually be easier to have an illustration clearer than to kind of get the hands out of the way of seeing what's happening with the yarn. But in any case, we ask the author to prepare a suggested list and submit that with the manuscript. And then as the editor's working through it, she or he reviews that list and may add to it, may take away from it. And we do book budgets before we contract for the book. And so we have a target number of illustrations or photographs that we're going for. But that number can change if we decide, this book really needs more. So then the editor will confer with the author, send them a revised photography or illustration list, and then the photo shoot, we commission the photographer and a stylist if we feel we need a stylist. And it varies. Sometimes we need the author to be there, like a knitting book where we want the author, or a sewing book in some cases where we want the author to actually be demonstrating the techniques. Others, the authors prepare a lot of the step outs or swatches ahead of time. And in that case, with some of our knitting books, actually, we've talked to the author just at the point that we contract for the book. We actually start talking about what yarn are you thinking of using? What color palette? Can we talk about what the color palette for the whole book will be? And can we establish a palette that we can both agree on? And they may get the yarn donated by a yarn company, but in any case, we try to think early on about what the photography is going to be like. And so we do have we work with a lot of different photographers. And in some cases, like our One Yard Wonders series, I know we've sent those projects to a photographer and stylist, and the art director hasn't even needed to go. I think the art director did go on the first time that we did one of those books. But if we send specific instructions, which the authors actually have been really good about doing, be sure to show the back of this with the buttons, and have a shot of that. And then in other cases, we might bring the author out to our offices for a week sometimes. It can take a week or two to do a photo shoot. The spruce upholstery book was amazing because we set up that photo shoot at Amanda Brown's upholstery shop in Austin, Texas, and our art director went out there for a week, and they worked together on. Amanda cleared out a whole room of her business and just did to spend basically 4 weeks doing the step-by-step photographs. And the art director was there for the first week, got them going, and then Amanda and the photographer continued on for the next 3 weeks.
Wow, that's amazing. That's going to create a really good
book.
Yeah.
So our art directors are very involved with that, as are the editors, but we really try to envision. And the other thing that we'll do sometimes is we'll actually do sample page designs before we do the photography. We did that with our knitting book, Cast on Bind Off, which is in this very distinctive format, and we wanted to be sure that the photos were going to fit in these small horizontal slots in the page. So having slotted out the designer actually slotted out with gray squares. This is where the photos are going to go. This is how many on a page. Then when they were actually taking the photos, the photographer was actually they could actually have a cue on their photo on the camera to see this is what it's going to look like when we crop it, the way that the art directors planned the photo to appear on the page.
That's interesting.
So there's a lot of different ways,
Yeah.
and we're flexible. With each book, we think about what's the most effective way to do the photography.
So you were initially hired at Storey in 1993. Mm-hmm. So you've been there for a long while now.
Yeah.
And you were the project editor, right, when you first came on.
Yeah.
And now you're the publisher.
Yeah.
So that's been a journey. And so I just wanted to know a little bit about, what does it mean now to be a publisher? What does that mean? You're the publisher. So what does that mean? What is your job?
Yeah, so it has been a really interesting journey. And I never thought that I would be there for this long, but it's always it's such an engaging. Our books are so engaging, and I've just always find it so interesting, and I love shaping the books, and that's always been what I've done as an editor, and then I slowly grew into doing acquisitions, which meant acquiring new books and finding authors, working with authors who sent us proposals, and so I did that for quite a while, and then I became the editorial director. Which was kind of an organic growth for me that I just had been there for quite a while, and providing oversight to the other editors and taking the lead in overseeing the guidelines for our editorial department, our editorial processes, and then as publisher, which I've been doing now for the last year and a half, my job is really to oversee the publishing program. So one of the main parts of that is deciding what books we're going to publish and really developing it as a list. So publishers, we publish 2 lists a year. We have a fall list and a spring list is how we kind of break up our books. We publish every month, but in terms of the publishing industry and the way we present our materials to our sales reps, we do that twice a year. So we divide it. So I look at the whole list and think, what's the balance in this list? And as I said, we have some gardening books, we have some craft books, we have some building books. We have a whole variety of books, and I think about what's the best time to release this book. Is this a gift book? Should it be coming out for the holiday season? Should it be coming out for New Year, New You, and or should it be coming? What the best timing for a book to release? And I also so I oversee that, and I also oversee the development of all of our books. So I work really closely with our creative director and the whole editorial department, reviewing page proofs of all the books in process, and overseeing the kind of story look to all of our books. And those are the primary functions that I do. I work closely with our managing editor in our contracts, our author contracts, our scheduling of books, and then I also work. And I'm also very involved with the marketing of our books. So overseeing now, I'm recently taken over overseeing the marketing and publicity department, which I really enjoy because the marketing of a book really begins at the very kernel of an idea. I find in the editorial process of what's the key thing about this book? Why should we publish it? What makes it exciting? What makes it different from other books that are out there? Why should this book be out there? What would people really want? And that is really follows the book all the way through the process. And when I'm looking at page proofs, is the book delivering on what we promised? Is it growing and expanding and delivering on even more or a little different angle? And then we need to fine tune the marketing positioning, and so that when we communicate this to our sales reps and to the retailers who are going to buy our books, we want to be able to say very succinctly, this is what this book is. This is why you should carry it. And then the back cover copy delivers on that and speaks to the consumer too, so that it's clear to understand what the book is.
And how many books are on the fall list and on the spring list?
We do about 40 to 45 books a year. So
half and half.
Yeah,
so
20, so it's about 20 on each book, on each list. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And about how many of those around are craft, or does it vary list by list, year by year?
Yeah. I'd say, 5 or 6 of them on each list. It's really grown in the last 10 years when we've seen this amazing resurgence of energy in the craft area. It's been interesting, actually. For a long time, we weren't doing a lot of craft books. We always dreamed about doing knitting books because we have guides to raising sheep, and we were in touch with that audience, but we always felt like, the knitting audience is kind of small. Interweave at that time had a lot of knitting books that were really speaking to the avid knitter. And then we started to see this increase of interest in knitting and thought, maybe there is a place for us in this, and started publishing knitting books. And it's been fun, too, lately we've been getting into spinning. We have our first weaving book coming out next fall, so that's going to be exciting for us. And we've also done some books like the Fleece and Fiber Source book that is a bridge between the people that are raising the sheep and the knitters and the fiber artists. Mm-hmm.
So makers and crafters and DIYers of all different types are invited to put together a proposal for a book and submit it to Storey if they're interested. And you have a really great guide, I feel like, on the Storey website, which helps people to put together that proposal. And I feel like not every publisher has such a good guide. Your guide is particularly good. And I feel like even if you're submitting to a different publisher, go and look at the Storey guide, because it's very succinct, and it gives you an outline of exactly what a publisher might be looking for in a good proposal. So that's super valuable and a great contribution just generally, I feel like. And I just wonder, how many new proposals are coming past your desk in a given, let's say, like in a week? I mean, I think sometimes people imagine publishers all sort of being like fiction. People publish fiction, where you've got like this slush pile that's just like, nobody ever looks at except some intern, and the editor or the publisher never even sees most of that stuff. And I know that that's not the case in DIY, and it's not the case in craft. So I just wonder, how many are coming by maybe your desk or the acquisitions editor at this point's desk, and then what you look for, so how do you go through those proposals and say, this one might be, a good one? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of craft proposals, it's a little hard to say. Maybe we get 2 or 3 every week or two, I would say. I wouldn't say that we're inundated with craft proposals necessarily, but the way Storey works, we often we're always talking to the authors that we've worked with before. We really like to cultivate relationships with our authors and help them build their platform. And if somebody has more than one book in them, we'd prefer that they continue to work with Storey so that we can sell all of their books together, which I think really it helps the author and it helps Storey. But in terms of a proposal, in terms of the ones when I open it up and I'm like, this is interesting. I mean, the first thing I would say is, if it's actually written and directed to somebody, to either me personally or our craft editor, Gwen Steege at this point, because having your name on it makes a big difference. So, and then we do have a list.
Versus saying, like, to whom it may
concern, exactly, or dear editor.
Yeah,
exactly,
or like
exactly.
That. To take the time to find out who is the person, and that is listed on the site, so it's possible to find that information.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it may not be possible with every publisher, but I think generally if you dig a little bit, you can find the name of
It shows that you truly investigated.
Exactly.
That you really,
Yes.
this is the publisher you're cultivating.
Yes, yes. And sometimes other things that catch my eye in a good cover letter are, acknowledgement of knowing who Storey is. So mention of another Storey title. I'm a fan of this Storey title, or I know I saw this book that you did, and it made me think of that you might be an appropriate publisher for my book.
Which is showing that the author has done research. And I know before I pitched my first book, I went to Barnes & Noble and I pulled every craft book off the shelf and I looked at every single one, and at the spine, like I said, I've become a big fan of spines. And at every publisher, and I was like, what is Northlight? What, who is Interweave? Which of these looks like my book in my head?
Exactly. That's exactly. I mean, I think that makes a huge difference, is to know who the publishers are. And I always say that to authors too, to potential authors, that to do that kind of research really makes a difference. The other thing I would say is to have a title for your book. It may not be, and certainly you can't be set on what the final title is, but a title that describes your book accurately. And it doesn't have to be a clever title at that point, but it really helps to, sometimes I'm reading and there's descriptive text, but I'm like, well, what's the hook here? What is the topic? So if it's like 20 knitting projects with variegated yarn, at least I know right away, okay, that's probably not a succinct title, but it tells me right away, I'd like you to consider my book proposal on 20 knitting projects with variegated yarn.
Which really, it's almost like an elevator pitch, because it shows that you've honed our idea enough to be able to give one title to the entire concept.
Exactly.
Which honestly is not that easy.
Yes.
Until you spend some time on your own working on it.
Yes, yes. And then I would say the other thing with craft proposals that really catches my eye is the presentation. Crafters have, if you can put your proposal in a folder or in some kind of presentation that represents your work and your crafting or your artistry in some way, it's really nice. And maybe sometimes it might just be some nicely laid out pages. Where you present photography. I think showing photos of examples of your work is really helpful and important in a craft proposal. A nice presentation. I'm not saying do page layouts and say this is how I want my book laid out, but I think a nice presentation and something interesting.
And are these, do most people submit digitally, or do most people submit hard copy, or both? I mean, I did both of mine digitally, and I feel like digital is sort of
digital is fine,
now,
but I get a lot. I like getting them physically, actually. Finding them in my mailbox too. I mean, digitally, it's a little bit. They can get a little bit overlooked. I do have like an active proposals folder in my email that I immediately put them into that folder. But having them physically on my having them physically on my desk that can make a difference sometimes.
That's a good tip. Yeah, I feel like it's so easy to do it digitally, and to have to print things and make that presentation physically, it can make a little bit more of a memorable impact. That's a good one. Okay, so I know you've worked with author contracts, which you mentioned, and so I just wanted, this is like a fine-tuned point, but I just wanted, since you have expertise, why not ask?
Sure.
So Storey offers both work for hire and standard royalty contracts. And those are two different things. And I think a lot of people sort of first getting into this don't necessarily know what is the difference between that. So what is work for hire, and what is that sort of contract and payment situation look like? And what is a standard royalty contract, and how does that work?
So work for hire means that you're actually selling your work to the publisher. So you've written it, but you're selling the rights to the publisher, and that the publisher can then publish that and go out and sell it, and could publish it in multiple formats if they wanted, or if it was a project book, then they could take the projects and divide them up and sell them individually. I mean, it would be up to the publisher how to do that now. Is they would own the work and could publish it, and it's for the lifetime of the work that they could keep it going. We actually don't do very many work-for-hire contracts anymore. The advantage of a work-for-hire contract is that you're going to be paid up front for your work. And if you think about it, often. I think magazine writing might be like this often. But you might think, oh, well, that's what I'd like, is to be paid $15,000 one time, and I'm happy to have the publisher go and sell it, and I don't have any risk. There's no risk to me. Doesn't matter how many copies they sell
or don't sell.
Exactly. Or if they find that it's a failure, there's no risk involved on my part, and I've gotten paid for it. Most of our contracts now are royalty contracts, and that's really our preference too. So with a royalty contract, you hold the copyright to your work. You're licensing the publisher the right to publish that work, but you continue to hold the copyright. And I guess I didn't make that completely clear. With work for hire, the publisher then owns the copyright, so you would actually be selling the copyright to Storey. But in a royalty contract, you hold the copyright, which means that it's still your work. And if at some point Storey decides that we're not going to continue to publish this, you could say, okay, I'd like my rights back now. I have the copyright, and then you could do what you wanted with that. You could go to another publisher. You could self-publish it. And the other thing about a royalty contract is that you get a percentage of every sale of the book for the lifetime of as long as the book is selling. So you're invested in promoting the book, we believe, so that it continues to sell.
And it's almost a partnership because
it is.
You as the publishers are invested in it as well.
Exactly.
And so if I'm the author and you're the publisher and we both are invested because we both earn income when each copy sells, then we're working together as a team to sell that book together.
Exactly, yeah. And that's really, that's the approach that we really like. It's a collaborative approach. We're working as a team, and we're both invested in it for the lifetime of the book. And with a royalty contract, what you do is you'll receive an advance against royalties. So that means you do get some money up front, but it's basically we calculate that based on what we actually believe the author. We actually do sales projections for a book before we contract for it. So if we say we think we can sell 10,000 copies of this book in the first year it's out, then we calculate if the book was priced at $19.95, how much would we would anticipate the author would earn in royalties for the first year. If it's priced at $19.95 and we sell it at a 50% discount, which means that the book is $10 is coming in, and a percentage of that is going to go to the author.
Say 10% or
something like that. And somewhere in the 6 to 10% is somewhere in that range. And so so if it was $10 that came in, and then 10% of that would be $1.
Right.
Yeah.
So the
author earns $1 a book,
right?
And we think we're going to sell 10,000 copies. Mm-hmm. That would be $10,000. We actually use that as our guideline for advances.
For the advance. So you're anticipating how much the author will earn back in royalties in a year, and you front them that.
Exactly.
And so so they use that money to sort of keep things going while they're writing the book, which frankly takes about a year to write the whole book.
Right.
And so they're using that 10,000 or less.
Yeah, they get half of they get half of it. Get half of it on signing the contract usually, and the other half after delivery of the manuscript and us deciding yes it's complete as it meets the agreements of the contract.
Right.
But yes, and then
the book comes out, which takes another year, and then that whole first year you're not going to earn anything because you've already earned.
Right.
And then you're going to wait until you're going to start to earn back.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And if you're out there promoting and we sell 15,000 copies instead of 10,000 copies, you're going to start to earn royalties sooner. Mm-hmm. But if we end up only selling 5,000 copies, then it's going to take, and if we sell 5,000 the next year, so that it's going to take 2 years to earn that off that advance. So that's kind of the mutual risk that we both take. I think, that's the risk that the author takes in a way. But most of our authors, Storey likes to keep our books, we like to keep our books in print for a long time. We like to invest in our books and keep them in print. We have books that have been in print for 30 years. I mean, we'll go back and do a revision sometimes of a book that we just did a second edition actually of Carrie Chapin's Handmade Marketplace. It's time for a refresh. Maybe we can refresh the sales. We can present it to our sales team again and say, this is a new edition. Now it's got information on Instagram that wasn't there, but that wasn't around when she did the first book. So it gives the book a new push, and So by keeping our books in print for a long time, it keeps the income stream going for both the author and the publisher.
Yeah, and I actually think that that's a little unusual maybe. I'm not sure, but I know that my first book came out in 2011, and it did very well, I feel like, but it is now going out of print. So whatever's left in the warehouse, that's all there is.
Yeah.
And I had a royalty contract, so the rights do revert back to me. Right. So once the stock is sold, I will get those rights back, and I can do with it what I want. Right. But it is not going to be in print by that publisher any longer.
Yeah, different publishers have different models in terms of how they approach that and how much revenue they're trying to get from their what we call backlist of the books that have been previously published versus frontlist, and Storey has traditionally looked at the backlist as a strong source of revenue. So we've been very invested in keeping that going.
Okay, and so let me ask you this question about to authors and publicity. So, I feel like there was a long period of time in craft book publishing when the blog tour was like a big deal. Yeah. So as soon as you were getting ready to launch the book, you'd organize a blog tour, identify 10, 15 bloggers who you thought had a lot, like reach, who had the right kind of audience, and then you'd send them a free copy of the book. Right. They'd maybe make a project, maybe not, do a giveaway, maybe not, or whatever, and every single day there'd be a different one for 2 weeks, and then it would be over. Right. And that was the launch. Right. And I feel like it got old. Yep. I mean, for me, it got
tired.
Old.
Yeah.
It got tired. It worked, but then it sort of didn't work.
Yep.
And I wonder if you have some thoughts on a better way or a new way or a creative way. What's working now online for promoting a book from the author perspective?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we definitely look to the authors to come up with inventive ideas for doing that. And I'm thinking about, let's see, if I can think of some. One of the things that's worked really well, I think Carrie Chapin has done it in her books, and we've seen it with our One Skein Wonders and our One Yard Wonders, is the craft community is so the craft world is so community oriented that having the community in the book somehow then there's a community of people that are really invested in promoting the book as well. So it's not just the author that's promoting it, but all of the people that are in the book. And Carrie, in Handmade Marketplace, she wanted to celebrate the people that had inventive ideas in handmade businesses or had done interesting things, and then all those people were excited to be included in the book as well. So that's one thing that I think has been very successful for us. I think video seems to be working well for some of our authors. That
people who are maybe filming a trailer.
Exactly, yeah, or a series of how-to videos. We've been talking about that with more of our authors. Yeah, those are ideas that I think of right now.
Video is great. And I had a trailer for my second book, which I funded myself. I hired a videographer, and we made the trailer because Lark had no budget for it. They were supportive, but they were like, that's on you. Yeah. So I used a portion of my advance to pay for that. And it was awesome. It was so worth the money, for sure. Yeah. So anyway, you can do it yourself if you don't have funds to do it. And it's entirely possible. It took a day, and it was really worth it. Yeah. So, you can get inventive and get creative. Yeah,
and we've been talking at Storey about how we can get creative with video, even of helping the authors, and even because we're a staff that really like to be engaged with the things that our books are about, we're starting to think about how we could do some video that we can help promote the books by there's staff that are brewing beer and some of the things that we're doing and trying out some of the techniques in some of our books and how we can show some of that ourselves as well.
Yeah, I love video. I think video is super effective. And okay, so let's talk a little bit about agents, just on the last note about sort of contracts and that kind of legal part of things. I didn't work with an agent. I know many people who did work with an agent, both had good and bad experiences in all different ways. I did work with a lawyer, I will say, who reviewed my contract and helped me to figure out how to negotiate. But then I did the negotiations on my own. But that's certainly not for everyone. So I just wondered, what do you think about agents? So if an author comes to you without one or with one, what goes on in your mind?
It actually doesn't make any difference to me whether an author comes with an agent or without an agent. I think the value of an agent is if you're having trouble getting your foot in the door with a publishing company. If there's a particular publisher that you really want to get the attention of and you've tried, or you want to get the attention of one of the larger publishers, I think an agent can be really helpful there. And different agents have different specialties and contacts with different publishers. And agents have brought me some great ideas that I wouldn't have heard about otherwise. But I always find it a little odd when an author, we've talked about an idea, we've actually even gone back and forth a little bit on a proposal, and then we're getting close to a contract, and then the author says, well, now I have an agent. And the thing about an agent, is that they earn a percentage of the sales of the book for the lifetime of the book. And it's usually like 15% of your proceeds, of your share of the
15% of the advance,
right? And
it's 15% of all future royalties for the lifetime of the book. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
And so, it might cost you $1,000, let's say, in legal fees, to have a good lawyer who understands intellectual property, who specializes in the field of publishing, to look at your contract with you. And you might think, oh my gosh, I'm spending all this money now. That's my part of my advance is gone. But it's a one-time fee.
Right.
So it's done. You paid for it, and it's done. You have their legal advice. So, you have to weigh the odds. And each person's going to make a decision differently. One other thing I feel like an agent can do, and we're talking about, first of all, you do want to select an agent who specializes in craft publishing, who has knowledge of the field. Because there are agents who are great at cookbooks and other things, and if you get in with the wrong agent, you're not going to get anywhere. So there's that. But the other thing is that an agent can help you develop your idea until it's publisher ready. And so if you feel like, I have an idea, I need help developing this, what are they looking for? How do I get from A to B? The agent can be the person in between who helps you develop it and get it ready. And then when you send it to Deborah, she's like, this is refined. This looks great. It's polished. It's perfect. It's got a good title. It's got everything Deborah looks for. And so if you're not sure how to get there, an agent can help with that as well. And that maybe is worth the fee.
Yeah, I think it may be worth the fee. And I think, as you said, I think... I think that an agent actually, a lawyer, that you can actually have a lawyer review your contract, and we've even had people who have a lawyer negotiate the contract too. You can actually pay a one-time fee, and some lawyers will actually do that as well, and we're open to that.
And so you could have a lawyer negotiate instead of an agent. Interesting.
Yeah.
It just depends on what you need.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do think, though, having somebody with expertise look at your contract besides the publisher and besides your mom is a good idea.
Yeah.
Unless your mom's
agree.
a lawyer. But I do think so.
Yeah.
Because the language, although you might understand what the words mean, how they're going to be applied in the future and in all different kinds of contexts that they imply is very difficult to understand. It just is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why people go to law school.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and you want to understand your contract. I mean, the worst thing is when an author comes back, sees their first royalty statement, and says, well, I didn't know that this was going to happen. And it's like, well, it is defined in your contract, actually. So it's really good to know the parameters of our contract is a fairly standard publishing contract, but there are things in there that it's really good to know exactly what you're getting in for.
Right. And if somebody comes to you and says, I'd like to negotiate this particular point, I do think it's important to emphasize that at that point you're not like, well, because you asked to negotiate, we no longer want to we don't want to work with you anymore. Yeah. How dare you? Yeah. How dare you try to stand up for your own rights?
Yeah.
Like that's not what's going through your head.
No.
And in fact, it might even be maybe I'm guessing what be going through your head would be actually they're a professional.
Right.
They have a business.
Exactly.
They are smart.
Right.
They should
Yes.
be thinking critically.
Right.
And so actually you're thinking of them in a better light, not in a worse light, because they dared to say X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
And not every point is negotiable, but good for you for asking.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and we appreciate those questions, and we like to explain our contract. And it's important to feel that you're being fairly treated from the beginning, and that nothing is being that the wool isn't being pulled over your eyes in some way, and that you've been taken advantage of.
Exactly, because then when the book does launch and come out, you feel good about it. The publisher feels good about it, and you can promote that book and feel like the whole thing was a good experience for sure. Yeah. Okay, all right. So I wanted to think back a little bit about how craft publishing has changed, because I think you have a unique perspective in that you were there in '93. Which, I started college in 1993. I was a freshman at Johns Hopkins that year. And that was the year I got an email address. Right? I went to college, and halfway through the year, they were like, here's a thing. It's email. And here's your address. And they gave it to me. And we had no internet in the dorm room. Nothing.
Yeah.
And so that was 1993. Yeah. And that was your first year at Storey. And now things have sure changed. So just tell me a little bit about, what was publishing like sort of what strikes you as being sort of, wow, things have changed.
Now I get to reveal what an antique I am. But because sometimes I think, how did we communicate before email?
What happened?
I think we wrote memos and put them in each other's boxes. And one thing that I kind of miss actually is I do remember spending hours on the phone with authors. We used to talk a lot more. We'd have phone conversations. Now it's all pretty much email, correspondence, a lot of it. I mean, we certainly can get on the phone, but it's like, can we set up a time to get on the phone? We never used to have to do that. And when I first started at Storey, we actually were editing our manuscripts on paper, and we were using scissors and cutting out pieces of the manuscript and retaping them, moving chapters around, and it was, and then sending them out for typing, which was actually data entry at that time. We did Storey, because we're actually located in a fairly rural location in Western Massachusetts, and so we've actually been fairly progressive in adapting new technology sooner than some of the New York publishers that have always had a typesetter, for instance, around the corner. When I started at Storey, the designers were already on those, the first, I guess, little Macs with the tiny, and working in PageMaker and doing the page layout. So while the editors were working on paper, we would then send everything out in the end, and we'd get a hard disk, a hard floppy disk, and then we'd hand that over to the designer, and they would actually do the layout in PageMaker. But what I heard from not long before I started there was that they were still driving 20 miles to pick up type from a typesetter, and then if there was a letter, a spelling mistake, they'd have to go drive the 20 miles again to get the corrected type.
And were the books printed overseas then?
No, they weren't. And that's changed a lot, actually, at Storey. When I first started there, most of our books were black and white. In fact, we were doing no color printing at all. So all of our books were black and white and pretty much all illustrated. Sometimes we used photographs. And some of the early books that I worked on in terms of the craft area were actually in the kind of herbal area, the herbal body book, which we did in 1995, and then soon after we did the natural soap book by Susan Miller-Cavich. And those books are 2-color with just line illustrations. And they're still in print, which is great. Actually, they've been in print for a long time. But that's, all of the books were pretty much 1 or 2 color.
And they were printed here in the U.S.
And they were printed in the U.S.
And then at what point, I know my books were all printed in China.
Right.
And so there was this lag between, the book is finished, the manuscript's complete, everything is done.
Yeah.
And now it goes to China.
Yeah.
And we wait for China to send it back.
Right.
That was like this,
right?
This
3-month, 4-month period. Yes.
Right. When it comes back on, I'm imagining a container.
Exactly.
Yeah, like on a ship. Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Comes back on a boat.
Yes.
Okay. This is sort of crazy.
Yeah.
So,
well, then that recent slowdown in the ports really, we had books bobbing out at sea there for a while.
Gosh. So that's stressful. So when did that happen? Do you remember when that
It's
shift
interesting
happened?
to say. I would say that I would say like in the late, probably around 98, 99, close to 2000 was when we really started to explore full color printing. Before that, there was a little period where there were quite a few packagers, British packagers that cropped up and they were doing a lot of creative craft books. Quarto was one of the first companies. Now they have U.S. companies, but they would prepare ideas for craft books, and we would buy them. So that we did we actually did a color soap making book and a candle making book, but they were delivering us finished books. They were New Holland Publishing. That's what was one of them, that we were buying the American rights to those books. So that's how we started, was in craft publishing, getting color, and then we started thinking maybe we could do this ourselves. Could we do this? And so we started exploring it, and I have to say some of our early books, and then we started adding color sections first to some of our books and still printing domestically. And then some of the first color books the color craft books that we did overseas, we did some early books on paper making with Helen Hebert. I think that was one of the early ones that we did, paper making with plants, and that was one of the first that we did in color.
Okay, so is it something about the color printing process that has to be done in an overseas factory? Because, I don't know, I'm imagining, are there regulations regarding inks or environmental concerns? I'm wondering why, or it's just too expensive for labor in the U.S.? I mean, so it sounds like the desire for full color books was what drove the move overseas. Yeah. And I just wonder, why can't we have that here?
Well, it's a good question, and I'd like to see more of it here too. I think from what I'm hearing from our production director, first of all, a lot of it has to do with the quality of the printing, and the paper that's available is that the overseas is generally is different from what we get domestically. And for full color printing, heavier paper that really takes the ink well. And a lot of it has to do with the binding style too, the sewn bindings. But all of this really comes down to price in the end. You can get that done domestically. We haven't been as happy with the quality that we've gotten, but it can cost double or triple. Lately, we've been doing some of our color printing in Canada. Actually, there's a couple printers there that we've had more competitive pricing, and we keep getting pricing. There are companies now that have plants both in China and the U.S., so we've been getting pricing from both plants and trying to see if we can get more done domestically.
Yeah, interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm thinking now about all the free content that's out on the web and on Pinterest and on blogs and everywhere, and especially on YouTube for craft content. And, there's so much of it. Now, granted, it's not curated, so you don't know what you're getting, and you have to slog through a lot to be able to find the one expert who truly can teach you the skill that you're looking to learn. Right. And so, a trusted publisher is great for that. So I just wanted you to sort of think about how do how-to books stay relevant and stay useful to people in this age of just so much excessive free,
Yeah, I mean, I think all the things that you mentioned of curated content that from an expert is a big part of it. But I do think there are other things that are appealing, and we think about it a lot. I mean, we're doing all of our books. We're releasing them as ebooks now at the same time that we release the print book, and we're actually producing our ebooks in-house. Our craft books are a great example where we really felt like when we sent it out to a service bureau that would do it, we have so many elements in our books, the illustrations and the photographs and the captions and the sidebars, that they were getting all jumbled up, and we needed greater quality control. So we're building our ebooks in-house, and we have a template that we've developed to create a really successful ebook. But at the same time that we've been doing that, we've been thinking more with every book as we're developing it. We think, how can we make this book feel really special? So is there something, what would be the perfect trim size for it? How should it feel in your hands? What should the paper feel like? And our art directors think a lot about the cover, and our creative director likes to say layering it with love. So it's like, how many things can we do to make this book feel special? Sometimes it's printing on the inside covers, or thinking about some special texture on the outside cover, or maybe it's a combination of gloss and matte, and we're always weighing the costs of these things. The art directors are always saying, could I have rounded corners on this book? Could there be a spiral binding so that with some of our crochet books, especially and the knitters, the crocheters and knitters have really commented on that a lot. So thinking a lot about how do you make the print book really special and feel like an object that you want to have. I think that's a big part of how to make the print book relevant.
Yeah.
And we found that some people want both books for their craft books. We're hearing that they want both editions, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So
both digital and print.
Yeah, it's like with a book like Cast on Bind Off. I've heard, well, I love having it on my iPad, so when I'm traveling, I can reference it easily. Mm-hmm. But I like having the physical book as well, and at home next to my knitting basket.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about? I really admire the fact that you've decided to create an ebook template in-house that will allow you to create ebooks that are the way that you want them to be. But so what do you think about being able to make that ebook layered with love? So the way that the print book is really special,
right.
And it's got special binding or end papers or rounded corners or whatever, so it's an object that you love and want to hold and want to buy. So what can people do, what can publishers do for an ebook to layer that with love, to make that something special and different and supplementary to something that you're going to get as a hard copy? So you're right, it can go the other way as well.
It can go the other way, and we have a lot of conversations about that. I mean, I think our first step has been to make it just a more enjoyable reading experience so that it's very clear. One of the things, though, that on a book like Cast on Bind Off that I mentioned before that we've commented on is that you can enlarge the photograph in a way that a knitting photograph, to be able to really enlarge it and zoom in on the hands, that's an advantage that you can't do in a print book. So being able to do that, also, I guess, having the cross-referencing in the book, with click-through, easy click-throughs
right. So
is
says,
something.
Turn back to page 14
exactly.
for this technique, and you click there, and it auto
we
turns
build that
back
all. Yeah,
14.
we build that all into the ebook.
Nice.
So that's a nice thing to do. And other things that we've talked about, wouldn't it be great to have video in some of our ebooks? The challenge there has been, well, how do we market it? We don't really want to market the ebook at this point. The ebook is really still, ebooks are still being sold under the guise of the ebook version of the print book.
Right.
So it's.
And I wonder, in the next 5 years, is that going to be? Are we still going to be saying that?
Yeah.
Or is the ebook going to be a thing in and of itself?
Exactly.
Where there's an advantage of buying the ebook. Oh, not just I have the directions on my iPad when I travel, but I bought the ebook so I get, or I bought the print book so I get. Right. I get spiral binding.
Yeah.
But I bought the ebook so I get supplementary video content. Exactly. So I need both, or one or the other. Right. But there's an advantage of each.
Right.
And I feel like we're still in that infancy of developing that. And I'm excited to see where it goes, but we're not there yet.
No, and right now we're at that stage like, well, why would we invest in this video to add to the ebook? Where are we going to advertise that? That the ebook it's enhanced and it has this additional content to it. Where do we put that? Of that information, and will it detract from the print books?
Right.
I mean, so far we really haven't seen a decline in our print book sales with having ebooks. We just see that as the ebook is another version. Some people have compared it to like when mass market paperbacks first came out, and people thought, oh no, there'll never be hardcovers again anymore. And it's just like, no, there's another place in the market. It's a different person or a different need that's being filled. So it'll be interesting to see, like you were saying, if the ebooks really become something very different on them in and of themselves. I would love to see. I mean, there's part of me when we first started talking about our ebooks, it's like, well, why would we try to create an ebook that is a mimic of the print book? You almost want to start from scratch and think, what would really be
Right.
How would you design it if you were designing it as an ebook originally?
Well, I'm thinking about mass market paperback books, because so usually when you have a new book release, like a fiction book, it comes out in hardcover first.
Right.
And it's only in hardcover. It's in hardcover only for, what, a year?
Yeah, something
2 years?
like that.
I don't know. Something.
Yeah.
The first part, you can only get it in hardcover. And so it's more expensive. And you get, right, and then I feel like the author, if it's a popular author, goes back on book tour again because their book was just released in paperback, right? And I was like,
exactly.
it's Terry Gross. She's interviewing this author of a book that's been out already for 2 years.
Right.
But, she's back on book tour because now the book's out in paperback. Yeah. So what if, this is a thought, right? Like, what if the book came out just in print? It was out in print for 2 years. And then... it's she's back on book tour because now the book's in ebook form with supplementary video content or whatever else is an enhanced version. Yeah. And so the ebook is held back for a period of time. Yeah. And then it's used like how you've gone back and had Carrie update her book for Instagram and adding that, and now it's re-released. It's a breath of fresh air into that book, and it can sales will get boosted again. Yeah. What if the ebook was used like that?
Right. It's interesting.
Right? That's interesting.
Yeah. Some of it has to do with ebook distribution too, because right now, pretty much Amazon is the source for ebooks. We certainly offer it to Apple and other, distributors, but so book tour, like independent bookstores would be,
Right.
So,
and when I say book tour, I don't necessarily mean she's traveling the country.
Yeah.
But I do mean sort of, whether it's
promoting
a blog tour or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a relaunch.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because one of our authors who's here said to me the other day, somebody here came up to her on the street and said, "Oh, I bought your book as an ebook." And she's like, "Great. Do you want me to sign your iPad or something?" Because she had just been doing this book signing, and it was kind of like, well, there's another downside. You can't do book signing for the So
that's a good point. I have to think about that. Yeah. Okay, so I know you love to knit, and I just wondered what project you're working on right now. What's in your project bag?
Well, let's see. I just went to Super Buzzy this morning.
Oh yeah, Super Buzzy. It's right here in
Ventura. Yeah.
Is it walking distance from here?
It's not. You have to drive a little bit, but
a car. Ride. All right, that's
just
cool.
a little bit beyond the. It's so great.
So for people who don't know, Super Buzzy is. It's a fabric store. They specialize in Japanese import fabrics that are like so fantastic.
Yes, they're
like
amazing.
The fabric that I've gotten there in the past. People always ooh and ah over it because they're like, "Where did you find that?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, you can find it."
It's an amazing selection. Yeah, and they have a wonderful online store. And I'd always bought from them. I didn't realize they had a brick and mortar store
until I got ready to come to Craftcation, and I was like, "Hey,
right, yeah." And this is my third year at Craftcation, so this is my third trip to Super Buzzy.
Woo-hoo.
So, so I've been working on. Well, there was one project. I did find some fabric there that I've actually working on a project from our One Yard Wonders book for a friend who just had a baby, and there's a play mat in there, and it was fun. I was able to get some washable fabric to put on the back of that, so I'm looking forward to sewing that when I get home.
Nice.
And knitting, I've been working on a bunch of different things. One of them, I sent you a photo of that Knit the Sky scarf that we're working on, this wonderful book that is just so fun. I've really gotten inspired by these creativity exercises using knitting as the vehicle. So the first project in this book by Lee Redmond, who lives in Berkeley, and she's had this project on her website, and that's how we actually found her. One of us noticed this project on her website and then contacted her. But the project is to put together assemble a basket of yarn with balls of yarn that are all the different shades of color that you might see in the sky. And then every day, maybe at the same time, take a look at the sky and then knit a stripe on your scarf that is the color of the sky today. And over the course I've started doing this in early February because I knew I was presenting the book at our sales conference 2 weeks ago. So I thought, well, I'll do a February, early March scarf. And being New England, it was like, oh, it's gray. It's gray. And now it's white again, snowing. And then it's gray. And then it's snowing. Oh, there's a little...
Speaking of which, I've heard it's snowing back where we live today. Did you hear that?
I did hear that.
We're just like on the beach and with palm trees.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway.
I didn't call my husband because I didn't want to.
But that's really neat.
But yeah, so I'm really excited about that, and she's got a lot of different projects like that. So I'm trying those out, and that's what I'm working on right now. I also have a vest that I was knitting on the plane. That's pretty much straight knitting piece. So I always have a few projects going at once.
Okay, super. All right, so let's just go and get a couple of your recommendations that I wanted to talk to you about. So I'll let you pick, but I think, let's see, maybe we should do Hope Spinnery.
Oh,
Should
yeah.
we talk about that
Sure,
one? So,
sure.
So tell me about that.
Yeah, so this was I discovered them at the Rhinebeck Sheep and Wool Festival, which is a wonderful event every fall in kind of our neck of the woods in the Hudson Valley. And it's a real gathering of knitters and fiber lovers, and the sheep are there and the goats. And so Hope Mill Spinnery is a place in Maine, and they have wind-powered, I've never visited, I'd love to see what it's like, but wind-powered spinnery, they say, and their yarns just have this wonderful texture to them. They're hand-dyed yarns and a wonderful soft feel to them. And I'd recently finished a hat. Well, before the cold weather actually left, I was able to finish the hat with the yarn that I had bought there
nice.
in October. So
yeah, it's nice to work with a special material. Like
it is,
that.
and for the yarn to really have a story to it too. And that's the source of the yarn, and it really feels like one of a kind because of the hand-dyed look to it.
Absolutely.
You know.
And you've been trying out some improvisational quilting.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about those. You took some workshops with Denise Schmidt. Lucky you.
I know. I've gone twice down to her studio in Connecticut, which has just been such a treat. And it's really fun. I mean, I've always been a sewer, but I have to say I've not been a really fine piecework quilter, but the improvisational quilting is just
That's
like,
for me.
This is me.
Because I don't like cutting things in a straight line.
No,
I refuse.
Yeah, and Denise doesn't, in her workshop, she doesn't let you use a straight edge.
Woohoo!
So it's just like start rotor cuttering, and then just start playing. The first one I took with her was her paper bag project, where you have different size scraps in different paper bags, and you just start pulling, and whatever fabric you get, you pick two pieces, you got to put those two together, and just to free you up and to withhold judgment and to just play with what you have. And I got so inspired by that then I went home and thought, well, I can do this. She did it with a lot of really ugly fabrics, and she did it on purpose to make everybody
it all
cringe.
flashes.
And it's like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then we started putting them up on the wall, and she started saying, look, this is interesting. See what you've done here, or the color, how the color gradation is working here, or what it's pulling out in the pattern. And it made you appreciate the kind of surprises that can happen with improvisation. And so I went home and I did that, but with my own curated choice of fabrics, but still working with them, just spontaneously pulling them out of the bag. And I actually finished a quilt top, and I actually went to one of our local quilt shops and had a little class and using the long arm quilter, and spent 8 hours there quilting this queen size quilt. But my niece loves it, so I gave it to her as her college graduation present.
That's so sweet. Yeah. I love quilt shops that have long arm, like rental time, and training.
Yes.
You need training,
You
and
do.
you need an assistant who's there for technical
exactly.
difficulties.
Yes.
But I think that's a really neat way for a quilt shop to enhance what they offer, is to invest in those, because you're not going to buy one.
No.
And instead of having another artist work on it for you, this allows you to actually complete the quilt in the way that you wanted to.
Yeah. And my quilting stitches reflected the improvisational. They matched the improvisational nature of the patchwork too. But
it's full with your
it was filled
love
with love.
Exactly. Love and intention.
Exactly.
So that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Deborah, it was great talking with you. Thank you so much for taking time away from the conference today to be on the While She Naps podcast.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So where can we find Storey online if we want to come and check it out?
Yeah. So Storey.com is our website, and and we also have a blog there, and we do have a newsletter that you can sign up for. So come find out about us.
Super. And you've been listening to the While She Naps podcast. I'm Abby Glassenberg, and I invite you to visit my blog, whileshenaps.com, where you'll find helpful information for creative entrepreneurs, as well as tutorials and patterns for making stuffed animals and dolls. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.